Kuriabe! Hi everyone, I'm Lauren and I am making this video from Madagascar. So I got your list of questions. I'm going to try my best to go through them all. It's a really good list. So I'm going to start with the ones about Madagascar. So what is the population of Madagascar? It is currently 23 million people, which to put that into perspective, the United States is 318 million and New York is about 20 million. So it's a little more than the population of New York State who live in Madagascar. And Madagascar itself is about the size of California. So, do tribes still fight? There are 18 tribes here in Madagascar, but they are currently all unified under one central government. So, no, they do not fight anymore amongst themselves, but they have one government, like the United States, um, that governs the entire country. So, what are living conditions like? Living conditions vary a lot if you're in a city or if you're in a rural area. So, right now I'm talking to you from a city. Um, and living conditions are kind of similar to the US. They have houses made of cement and indoor bathrooms and things like that. But where I was living before in a village, I lived in a hut made out of local materials, so it was made out of leaves. And we had a pit latrine because there was no running water or electricity or anything like that. So it varies a lot depending on where you are in the country. What is their best form of technology? People in the same, it's different for cities versus the rural areas, but they have pretty much the same technologies that we have at home. They're just a little slower. So there's internet, but it doesn't work as fast. They have cell phones, but they're not quite as good. Um, yeah, everything's just a little slower. Do men still carry guns? Yes, people carry guns. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but there are a lot of military people that walk around carrying large machine guns, things that you would not see in the U.S. Um, but guns actually aren't that popular for regular citizens. It's more for military people who have guns. What do kids do in their free time? So in Madagascar, a lot of kids have to help raise families. So older kids will help out with younger siblings and do a lot of chores around the house and things like that. But when they do have free time, they play outside. They have toys. I think in the picture presentation, you're going to see some of the little toys that they have. It's very different than in the States. There are a lot of handmade toys, or kids play games with rocks or rope or things like that. They don't have a lot of fancy toys, but they find ways to play. What is the weather like? So this also varies all over the country. Madagascar itself is kind of shaped like a giant mountain. So in the center, it's really high, and here it's cold. And then as you get further out to the coast, it gets warmer. So right now I'm in the capital, which is in the middle of the country, and it is cold here, at least to me. It's about, I think, 64 degrees right now. But as you get out to the coast, it gets warmer and warmer. And the seasons are opposite of the U.S. So right now is winter for here. So for winter, 64 degrees doesn't sound like that cold, but for Madagascar, it's pretty chilly. But on the coasts during the summertime, it can get over 100 degrees and it's humid all the time, so it's very hot. um, what is the next one? Oh. What would happen if there was no rain for a long time? So rain also varies based on where you are in Madagascar. Where I lived on the East Coast, it rains a lot, especially this time of year. It's rained, I think, every day for the past 2 weeks. But in the south of Madagascar, it's very dry. So they're actually dealing with this right now where it has not rained down there in a very long time. And it does cause a problem because crops can't grow and a lot of people are hungry because there's not enough food. And just there's no access to water, which is very difficult. So, if it is hard to provide food for people, how do they feed the animals? That's a really good question. A lot of animals don't have special food like they do in the States. Animals will eat leftover food from people. If whatever's left over from their meals, they'll feed it to their animals or kind of scraps from cooking. Um, Farm animals mostly just graze, so they'll just put them out on the field and they'll eat grass, but they won't have any special grains or anything like we do in the States. So do they have farms? Yes, there is lots of farms in Madagascar. One of the biggest things they farm here is rice, which is the staple food of every meal. Every meal is rice and something else. 3 times a day, every day. So that's a big one. People also farm vegetables, and there are also things called cash crops, which are crops that get exported for money. So they have things like vanilla and cloves and spices like that, and a lot of fruit. Especially in my region, we were really big on fruit production. So we had pineapples and mangoes and things called lychees and jackfruit and all sorts of things. Papaya is a big one too. That grows a lot. So, what kind of animals do you find in Madagascar? The most popular animal found in Madagascar is the lemur. There are lots and lots of different kinds, and based on where you are in the country, again, there's different kinds of lemurs everywhere. Besides lemurs, you can find little tenrecs, which are like sort of hedgehog animals. They're kind of small little things. We also have there's no large animals here, so no elephants or lions or tigers or any of those typical mainland Africa animals. We do have some snakes, the chameleons, geckos. There's a thing called a fusa, which is it kind of looks like a small cat, but it's more of a mongoose. You can look that up. Um, it's a pretty cool animal. So, what are behaviors of the people? That's actually a hard one to answer, but the thing about Malagasy people is they're people like everyone else. We all have the same kind of behaviors. They're just trying to get the most out of life and help raise their children and have enough to eat. Um, what are some things that are similar about Madagascar and New York? Um, I have to say, probably just people. Everywhere you go, people are, and even though they live in very different conditions and under different circumstances, people end up being very similar in a lot of ways. Okay, moving on to questions about school. Do boys and girls both go to school? Yes, they do. A lot of times, depends on the region also. Since people have to pay to go to school, which is another question on here. Yes, people pay to go to school. They are it is public school, so it's supposed to be free, but the government does not pay enough or sometimes pay at all. So each student has to put in money to help pay for supplies and pay for the teacher's salary. Um, so boys and girls both go to school, but sometimes parents don't have enough money to send all of their children to school. So depending on the family structure, sometimes they'll pull girls out of school because girls are needed to help raise younger siblings. Or if the family doesn't have younger siblings but they need more money, they'll pull the boys out of school so the boys can go work. It goes for both boys and girls both get pulled out. It tends to mostly be girls because a lot of people invest more in boys' education. So if you can't send all of your children to school, a lot of times they will want to send the boys because they think that the boys can go further in life and have more job opportunities later on. So yeah, they pay for education. How much? It varies a lot. Sometimes they pay in money, sometimes they pay in rice, sometimes they pay in wood, sometimes they pay in all three. So you'll pay a fee, but then every semester you'll have to bring in rice and wood for the teacher because they don't have the means to grow it themselves. So they need wood to cook and the rice because everybody eats rice. How many kids are in the school? I don't know the exact number, but I did send a picture so you can see the full group of kids. No, there is no nurses in the school, so the school is simply just the teachers, the students, and they have a directress, which is like the principal, who usually also ends up teaching because there's not enough teachers. But there's no nurse, there's no cafeteria, there's no janitors, nothing like that. The kids go home every day for lunch, so they go to school. In my area, the elementary school is from 8 a.m. to 1:30, and then the kids go home for the rest of the day and they eat lunch at home. And in the middle school, they have a 2 hour break in the middle where they go home and eat lunch and then come back to school. How much money is it to make a school in Africa? I don't really know, but um, supplies here are cheaper, but things to make a school like cement and people to build it are some of the most expensive things that you can find in Africa. or in Madagascar. Um, so it actually ends up being pretty costly. So questions about me. What motivated you to go to Madagascar? I actually didn't choose Madagascar. I applied to the Peace Corps because it was something that I was really interested in doing, and I wanted to use my experiences to go to a different country and learn about a different culture and help people over there, people who are less fortunate than I was. And through that process, I was matched with Madagascar. So I didn't choose it, but it chose me, and I feel like I'm pretty lucky for that. So where do you live? I lived on the east coast of Madagascar in the Tamatave region, in a city, in a village called Mbunivatu. How did you feel when you first got there? Honestly, it was pretty scary when I first got here. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the culture. There were a lot of things you have to get used to and learn. It was a lot of learning. But you get used to it, and now I love it. What else? How long did it take you to get used to how you live? Um, so not that long actually. The language was the hardest part for me. That took the longest to get used to. But when you really don't have any other options, I was just kind of thrown into a situation, and you have to learn how to live like that, and you get used to it pretty quickly. Um, since they live so differently, did you enjoy staying there? I definitely enjoyed staying here, and learned a lot about a different style of life, and there are a lot of things I love about Malagasy culture that I really, really enjoyed learning about. I lived by myself in my hut. So when I first came to Madagascar, I lived with a family for 3 months to learn Malagasy, the language, and to learn about culture, and to learn how to cook for myself. Because you have to use a different kind of stove here. You can't just turn a knob and a stove turns on. You have to make a fire, and it's a whole process. I had to learn all of that. I lived with a family. I had a mom, a dad, and a brother and sister when I first got here. And then when I moved out to my village in Bunivatu, I lived in a house by myself. What type of animals were in my community? Oh, there were lots of dogs and cats and chickens and mice and lots of rats um, and cows. Those are the most common ones. Have you ever taken an animal into your house to have company? Yes, I have. I had 3 cats. Um, I'll send a picture so you can see them. Uh, I had Killer, Milo, and Milo's, oh, actually, I had 4 cats: Milo, Mama, and their baby, Murphy. Um, did you raise cattle or animals? I did not. I know a lot of other volunteers who raise ducks or chickens, but I've never raised any myself. What kind of things did you do when you weren't working? A lot of times when I wasn't working, I was hanging out with children. So I had a group of kids that would come to my house to color and read books and play games. And I would teach them English, and they would teach me Malagasy. We would just hang out. Other than that, there was a bread stand next to my house where this older woman in my town sold bread and coffee, and all the women in the town would come there, and the men too, would come there to gossip and talk about things that happened that day. So we would sit there and eat fried bread and talk. What did you like doing the most there? Mostly just talking to people and hearing their stories. It's really fascinating to hear about the traditions and just people's stories of how they grew up, where they live, what they've done in their lives. It's really fascinating. What did you help the kids the most with? The kids I worked with the most, I had a group of kids in my village who we had a little kind of reading club. They would just come over and look at books, and I'd help them read, and we'd talk about what was in the books. So I had a lot of National Geographic books with animals, and I would teach them about animals in different parts of the world and about just different things that they didn't learn in school. What do I usually eat there? So rice. Rice is a big one. In my village, I was basically a vegetarian just because meat was very hard to get. So I ate a lot of beans and a lot of vegetables. And my village also eats a lot of fish. We had people would go out and fish every day, and then they would walk down the streets just with buckets of fresh fish for sale. So I would eat a lot of that. When you first went to the village, were the villagers nice to you and welcoming? Yes and no. The villagers are very nice to me, but they were also very scared of me. So people at first were very nervous and didn't want to be around me and were kind of afraid to interact with me. So they were nice, but from a distance. And then we started getting to know each other. And actually, as I started hanging out with their children more, they grew to trust me. And um, yeah, welcomed me into their village as one of their own. Um, what did I miss the most about the United States? Um, whew, probably delivery. it's um, it's so easy in the U.S. to just call someone up and have food delivered to your house or things like that. And here, I would get home from a long day of working and then still have to go through a whole process of cooking food and planning out what I was going to eat because I had to go to the market or I had to plan my water and put it in the filter. And it's just things are much more convenient in the U.S. Yes, there were stores where I could buy things. Not in my direct village. My village had little markets or little stands that you could buy things from people when they were there. But in the big city, they have stores that are pretty like American style-ish stores. Not as many options, but like a supermarket you could go to and buy things. Were you able to go up to a wild animal? I've never touched a wild animal, but I've been near them. So I've gone on hikes through forests and seen snakes and chameleons and lemurs and all of those things I've talked about. I've also had lots of rats in my house, so those are wild animals that I've encountered. Did you get a lot of mosquito bites? Yes, I have. I have tons of them. um, is it exhausting? Yes, it is exhausting, but in a really rewarding way. So one of the most exhausting things about living in Madagascar is that you have to you're kind of constantly processing things. So you're speaking in another language, so you have to be translating constantly in your head and then thinking about how to reply and then thinking about if you're replying in a culturally appropriate way. So you can say things that you would always say, but you have to think about how a Malagasy person would say them and then think about how you would say that in that language. So it gets pretty exhausting. How long does it take to get water or go to the river? My river was about a 5 minute walk to my house, but it was down a pretty steep little hill. So in the dry season, it was really great, but in the wet season, it was really slippery, and I fell a few times getting water. But I was pretty lucky in how close I was to my river. I know people that have to go a lot further. Is it fun helping people? It is very fun helping people. Uh, yeah, it's fun. What is your favorite animal? Um, So my favorite animal here in Madagascar would be the Indri, which is one of the biggest lemurs here, and it's just this really pretty black and white lemur, and it's so human-like. If you look at its hands, they just look very human-like, and I don't know, just the way it sits in trees, it's a very cool animal. And it has this great sound it makes. It has a call that sounds almost like a whale song. So if you're in a forest and they're singing to each other, it's this beautiful sound. So they're definitely my favorite. Have you ever been in a dangerous situation? Um, no, thankfully I don't. I don't think I have been in a truly dangerous situation here. I've been in situations that are different than in the U.S. that I might have considered dangerous before, but just things like the way you ride on taxi Bruce, which is the buses that ride on the road, and the roads you ride on could be pretty dangerous. But um, as far as I've never really felt unsafe, which is good. This is a very safe country in that sense. What is the most challenging part of your job? The most challenging part of my job is getting um, having people listen to you. A lot of people will see you as a foreigner coming to this country, and they're like, well, they don't understand why um, that your ideas are any different than theirs, or why they might be better or not. So it's a lot of creating relationships with people and a two-way conversation. So you have to talk to someone, listen to their ideas, and then share your ideas and your experiences, and then together come up with new solutions. So it's one of the hardest parts. A lot of people go to a foreign country and they'll just tell people what they think, and people are used to that and they resent it. They don't like when that happens. So when you go to another country, you have to discuss things with people and share ideas in a conversation, not in a forceful way. So it's very difficult to get people to open up to that because it's not what they're used to. So you have to start these conversations. Did you ever work anywhere else? In another country? No, this is the only other country I've ever worked in. Have you ever encountered a dangerous animal? Thankfully, there are not many dangerous animals here in Madagascar. There are no venomous snakes, and there are no big predators. So no, I have not encountered a dangerous animal. Have I made any friends in Madagascar? Yes, I have. I have many, many friends, and I'm very sad to leave them. How do you communicate with people far away without phones? This is a great question. So, a lot of my time has been spent walking around trying to find people because you cannot communicate with them. A lot of people do have phones, but they don't have electricity, so they're usually not charged. And here you have to buy credit to put on your phone. So, your phone doesn't just automatically work. You can't just call somebody. You have to go to a stand that sells a little card that has credit, and then put that on your phone, and then use that to call another person and hope that their phone is on. So a lot of time is spent walking around finding people, or you send a message with somebody. So you just ask someone if they've seen the person you're looking for, and eventually the message spreads. It's really really amazing how fast messages could spread. I'll just tell one person I'm looking for somebody, and then all of a sudden they'll come up and be like, "Oh, this person told me that this person told them that this person told me that you're looking for me." So it works out easier than you would think, but a lot of time is spent finding people. How does your job affect the people's lives? Well, that's a really hard question. Um, I would say most of my job, the job I worked in was in a conservation organization. So we tried to get people to have a better relationship with the environment and to recognize the value in the environment and why it should be conserved. So I did a lot of environmental education, and so hopefully I affect people's lives and that they understand more about the environment that they live in. Because many people don't know what's outside of Madagascar, so they don't realize why Madagascar is so special or how their forests are being depleted so quickly. So by sharing these ideas with them and kind of having them take pride in their country and in their forests and in their animals, make people want to protect them themselves. How has this experience changed your life? That's another really good and really big question. This experience has changed the way I view things, and it's kind of helped me look at the world in a different perspective. So it's really hard to know how another country works until you live there and live like the people live. So being fully integrated into a Malagasy community and having Malagasy friends and Malagasy family has just shown me why people do the things they do and why they think the way they think, and it's just opened my eyes to how to perceive things in a different way. So even in the U.S., with people I don't agree with, I now have like a different tool of how to understand where they're coming from. That's a really big thing. How long have you been away from home? I have been in Madagascar for about a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years. And finally, how did it feel leaving Madagascar? I haven't left yet. I'm still here, but I have about a week left and I'm coming home. And it is a strange feeling. I am really excited to go home because I have been away for so long and I miss my friends and family from home. But it is very hard to leave this country because I love it so very much. And I have so many great experiences here. And I hope to come back soon. So I think I got most of the questions. I might have missed a few, but if you have more questions, let me know, and hopefully I can answer again. But I hope you enjoy learning a little bit about Madagascar, and I have to say my school, but I thanks you so much for all your contributions, and they're very excited, and it's been a great partnership. So Socha Betsica, Veluma.